Greetings. I want to welcome you to our final workshop session of the 2021 Chisholm Annual Gathering. I'm George Graham, Vice President of Chisholm. You're attending the workshop entitled Escaping Martyrdom, Avoiding Burnout While Heeding the Call with the Reverend Brandon Simmons. Before I turn it over to Brandon, I want to thank our partners at the Church Building and Loan Fund for sponsoring this workshop. And here's a brief message from the UCC Church Building and Loan Fund.
At the United Church of Christ Church Building and Loan Fund, we transform communities by helping the church live into God's economy. We help congregations plan, raise, finance, and build transformative projects. CBLF continues to build upon its rich 160-year history of helping churches better deploy their assets for mission. The United Church of Christ Church Building and Loan Fund, helping you plan, raise, finance, and build transformative projects.
Thank you, Church Building and Loan Fund, for your ministry and for your support of this session. Brandon Simmons is a UCC pastor, executive coach, writer, and corporate trainer. He's executive director of Generations Care Partners Foundation, which recently became a Chisholm member. Brandon's work is really centered on making sure that caregivers receive the care that they need in order to keep on caring. A year into the pandemic, I think we're all looking forward to what he has to say about avoiding burnout. After Brandon's presentation, there will be time for Q&A, but you're welcome to put your comments and questions in the chat at any time, and we'll have a chance to talk more after the presentation.
Hello, I am Brandon Simmons. I am a professional certified coach by the International Coach Federation, and I am executive director of Generations Care Partners Foundation. We are a nonprofit that specializes in executive coaching, organization development, and leader development, different types of trainings for nonprofits, healthcare, and churches. And today I want to talk to you about the topic of escaping martyrdom, avoiding burnout while heeding the call. So as we talk about burnout and stress, it's important to understand the difference between the two. And I specifically want to talk about these two things within the context of nonprofits, social justice, leadership, things like this. So let's look at stress first. Stress manifests itself physically, and that is in the heart and in the brain as a result of outside triggers. So for example, when you are getting in that moment where you think it's going to be a Calgon take me away moment, and the kids are screaming and saying, oh, wait, can you take me here, drop me off there, do this, do that? Or if you're at work and you're trying to get into your flow or your zen, and your boss keeps just poking at you and poking at you and poking at you, that's an outside trigger that causes stress. Now, stress will manifest itself in the body, and you might feel that tightness in your chest or a headache. And it's important to realize that these things are dangerous because as the heart and the brain are connected, eventually these things can lead to heart attack, stroke, and over time increase the potential for things such as vascular dementia and other things like this. Now, burnout, on the other hand, is manifest in an emotional or psychological way. That is for example, in depression or in apathy. So you may find yourself doing something that you at one point really loved, and then all of a sudden feel like you don't care at all about doing it. Just could not care less. So burnout happens as a result of doing the wrong things for the wrong people for the wrong reasons. So, for example, you may find that you are feeling emotionally overwhelmed because somehow you have bitten off more than you can chew. But the misnomer is that people think that burnout is from doing too much. Well, that's part of it. But it's not just doing too much. It's doing too much of the things that aren't really who you are for people that aren't necessarily as critical to you for the wrong reasons. So let's continue to explore this. Martyrdom syndrome. That is, as I call it, jumping on every hill or cross that comes along, saying yes to every great opportunity to help people and to change the world. I can recall in my younger years when I used to say yes to everything. I have a number of degrees, and that is not a bragging point. That just means I have a number of skills where people can come and say, hey, I think you would be a good fit to help us out with XYZ. Or that I could delude myself into saying, hey, I should jump in here and lend a helping hand. But what happens over time is you do too many of these things and you end up with a full plate, and you're jumping on every hill or every cross, and you become a martyr unto yourself. So let me give you a couple of examples. Caregivers. Caregivers, specifically caregivers who are informal family caregivers, those who are caring, for example, for an aging loved one in their home. So this caregiver, we'll take the model postcard caregiver, the 45 to 65-year-old woman who is trying to juggle everything. She's sandwiched between mom who has dementia and her kids who are teenagers, and trying to balance relationships, perhaps with her partner or spouse, in addition to her friendships and her career and everything else. And here she is trying to make mom's life perfect. In doing so, she's becoming a martyr because nobody asked her to make everyone's life perfect. So we'll look in a little bit at how to undo that or how to avoid it. There's also the social justice warrior who is so passionate about helping people, about affecting lasting change in the world, about deconstructing systems of oppression, about many wonderful things. And so when any opportunity arises, she or he will jump on that bandwagon or that opportunity and lend a helping hand. But it often ends up to her or his detriment when they're jumping on too many opportunities. So how do we avoid this? Well, it's important always, I think, to check in with yourself, to ask yourself good questions. And later in this presentation, I am going to get into what some good questions might be. But when dealing specifically with the martyrdom syndrome, before you even get to that point where you're feeling overwhelmed and you've put too much on your plate, it's important for, in the example of the caregiver, to ask a question like, what does a good day look like? Now, that question applies not only to the caregiver. That question also applies to the person being cared for. So it's both. So usually they only apply it, if at all, to the person being cared for, but never really check in with themselves to see what a good day looks like for them. So for example, take the example of the caregiver caring for her mother. And if this person, for example, has advanced dementia, they probably don't have a lot of expectations. Perhaps a good day may look like, for example, having a cup of tea on the veranda and watching the Golden Girls. Just making that up, but sometimes that's a true scenario. But the caregiver may be trying to make sure that she has a bath every day and that she has the perfect meal and that she has this and that and the other and every hour on the hour, giving full and complete attention when it's not really necessary. So it's important to check in and say, what does a good day look like? Just meet those expectations. And then to check in with the caregiver herself and ask herself, what does a good day look like for me? Perhaps it's being able to take a walk. Perhaps it's being able to watch something on Netflix, or to have dinner with a friend, or get her nails done, or have some quiet time alone, or who knows what. Whatever that may be, it's important for that caregiver to check in with her or himself and to be able to meet those expectations for themselves also. For the social justice warrior, it's quite similar, but a good question might be, where is my passion? Now, a lot of times people assume that anything to do with social justice is legitimate passion. Okay, that's fine. But let's go on to the next slide and see how that plays out. I believe in formulas. I believe in applying logic to situations, because when we get too lost in our thoughts and too lost in the existential, it becomes hard to make decisions. I am all about the existential. I'm all about the mystical. I'm all about the esoteric. But there come times when we have to have some sort of a plumb line to be able to check in with ourselves. So, the magic formula, if you will, realizes that it's okay not to be passionate about a worthy cause, and even more important, to be honest about it. So when somebody comes along and presents something regarding social justice, for example, or some nonprofit issue, or whatever it may be, it may not be your thing, and that's okay. Unfortunately, oftentimes we feel icky. We feel, oh my God, I'm a bad person if I don't care about this issue. It doesn't mean you don't care about it. It doesn't mean you don't care about the human beings who are affected by it. It doesn't mean you aren't a humane human being. It means this particular issue isn't your thing. That's okay. Frederick Buechner said that vocation is the place where our deep gladness meets the world's greatest hunger. Hold on to that. The modification, I think, is that our calling is where our skills meet the immediate need where we are, plus our passion. So think about that. If we're trying to figure out if something is for us, say there's an opportunity that somebody brings to us, or maybe we see an opportunity that we're thinking of jumping on, it's good to pause, take a deep breath, and check in with this formula. Do I have the skills for this? Am I equipped for it? Okay. If I do, if I'm halfway decent at whatever this thing requires of me, okay. Is it an immediate need where I'm at? Or am I going to have to go out of my way in distance or whatever it may be to do this thing? And lastly, is this my passion? Is it legitimately something that I am deeply passionate about? Does it bring me gladness? That's another way of asking the question. If I were to do this, would I experience joy? It's not something that we ask ourselves very often, but I think it's critical. Now, a lot of times we equate joy and happiness, and we end up saying, well, go do what makes you happy. I don't think that's the same thing. Go do whatever makes you happy is kind of an ego-driven thing. And sometimes that's dangerous for yourself and for others. But do what brings you joy. Do what your passions drive you to. I think that's good because it's genuine. It's rooted in your true and authentic self. And we'll get more into that in a bit. So our calling, if you will, or our vocation, or that which we should be doing, is dynamic. It's not static. It changes. A lot of people, I believe, spend their whole lives looking for their calling, looking for that one thing that they are meant to do. I think that can be a waste of time, because I've seen people do that and end up doing nothing because they're looking for that one right thing. So they end up becoming frozen because they don't see it. And I've seen people on the other end who do everything, right? Who get caught up in the martyrdom syndrome because they think everything is their calling. Calling is dynamic. It depends on the context. The context changes. You add more skills all the time to your toolbox. You are more skilled today than you were yesterday. The needs around you change. You might move. You might change neighborhoods within the same city. You may change cities or states. So the needs are going to change. Neighborhoods change even if you stay in the same place. Your passions change. We change as human beings. So it's good to check in with ourselves on a regular basis and see how these variables line up. It doesn't mean that they're always going to remain the same. For example, you may be incredibly passionate about affordable housing. That may be your thing. You may be skilled in navigating all of the bureaucracy and know all about all of the legislation, have connections to all the right people, and you may be super passionate about providing affordable housing to folks. But then as you get older and mom or dad gets older and you find yourself needing to care for them, and you start to realize these gaps where Medicare only covers so much, and Medicaid and the coverage that's allowed, and the people who provide services under Medicaid are limited, and you find yourself in this huge gap, not knowing how to navigate long-term care, long-term coverage and insurance and advanced directives and all these things. And you're like, my God, caregivers need an advocate, and there needs to be better funding for people in the middle, some sort of a long-term care insurance program that's sponsored by the government, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And voila, legitimately, your passions change. And as you study it, your skills change with it. And you're definitely right there, because you're right there in the mix, in the throes of caregiving. So, preventing burnout. If then the recipe for burnout is doing the wrong things for the wrong people, for the wrong reasons, check in. Checking in involves having good, strong, powerful questions. And as a coach myself, I believe in those questions. There is a principle in coaching called the constructivist principle that says anytime we are asked a question, there is an immediate shift that occurs. Not even when we ponder the question. If somebody asks us the question, and that includes when we ask ourselves a question, immediately there is a shift and our perspective widens, and there is more potential to be able to see something through a new lens. So, leader, coach thyself. Ask yourself, what am I doing? If you're doing the wrong things for the wrong people, for the wrong reasons, and that's why you're feeling burned out, oftentimes we don't take the time to ask ourselves what we're doing. Well, it's obvious what I'm doing. You can see what I'm doing. Maybe, maybe not. And maybe it's not so obvious to yourself. So ask yourself, what am I doing? Next, who am I doing this for? Now, you may be doing it for somebody that you care about. Okay. Maybe somebody that you love. All right. You may be doing it for a boss that you don't give a rat's behind about. It's okay to say that too. And you may be doing it for your ego so that you can feel affirmed, or so that other people like you, and it has nothing to do with that person that you're doing it for. That is an immediate recipe for burnout. And that is something to check in and to process and to do that inner work on. Why am I doing this? Why have you said yes to this? Or if somebody told you to do it, why have you not found a way to delegate it or to do it differently, or whatever the case may be? And then this question that we don't take the time to ask ourselves, but who am I? Not your career, not what do I do, not I'm a lawyer, I'm an executive director, I'm a doctor. That's not the question. Who are you? Who are you as your true self? And how you answer that is very important. Because think about it. When is the last time you asked yourself, who am I? To be able to apply those right adjectives, to be able to say, I am what? Because as the saying goes, I am is a complete and powerful sentence. And it's one that we need to believe for ourselves. So true self. I mentioned the true self. What the heck is this? And how do we get connected with it? Thomas Merton, one of my favorite mystics, said, what can we gain by sailing to the moon if we are not able to cross the abyss that separates us from ourselves? This is the most important of all voyages of discovery, and without it, all the rest are not only useless, but disastrous. So think about this. What good does it do if we can fly to distant planets or moons if we're not even able to do that work or to complete that process of crossing that abyss from where we're at to our true self? And he says this is the most important of all voyages of discovery, this self-discovery journey. Without it, all the rest are not only useless, but disastrous. Because if we are not operating out of our true self, if we're operating out of our false self or our ego, then we are bound for disaster. So, how do we make decisions? For example, is it ego-driven? A lot of times when I am coaching people, I want to check in. I want to make sure that they are operating out of their true or authentic self. For example, if a client comes to me and says that they want to make VP or CEO or executive director or whatever in their organization, I want to make sure that that's their authentic self who has that goal and not their ego. That they're not doing this just to gain affirmation or that they feel like they'll finally be accepted by society or whomever when they get to this point, or that they'll finally be able to accept themselves. And surprisingly or not, many people are on a journey just for that reason. So I want to make sure that it's not ego-driven decision making and that it's based in their true self. So it's important for us to check in with ourselves and ask, how do I make decisions? False self. What is the false self? The false self is the ego. It's another word for the ego. It's that thing that we have created over years to protect ourselves. It may be because of something that happened in childhood. It doesn't even have to result from trauma or any negative experience. We all have an ego, and it's not a bad thing. The ego can be very helpful. The ego can drive us to get stuff done. The ego can drive us to be motivated sometimes. But we also have to be very aware of what it looks like and what its motivations are. So the ego writes a story. And if we're not careful, that story becomes adopted by us as our true story, even though it's not. So let me give you an example. If, for example, you've had a negative childhood where you weren't accepted by your parents or one parent left, and you feel like, oh, well, I must be a bad person if I'm bad enough that my own parent didn't want me. So then you have written the narrative that your parent didn't want you, therefore you're a bad person, and you continue to write your life story from that place. And that narrative becomes your life story. When if you unravel it and go back to the beginning, that parent had their own issues. They had their own story. They had their own reasons that had nothing to do with you. But you projected, because you needed a reason, right, to justify why that happened to you. So then you started to write a story to make sense of it, even though it was false. So the true self is in Christianity, what we would say is that part of us that was made in the image of God. It is that, if you think of a Venn diagram, it's that intersection of the divine and the human. It's right there in the middle. It's who we really and truly are. It's when we sit in this stillness and we are able in contemplative moments or quiet moments to feel our real sense of being. Another way to describe it is when we're doing something and we feel like, oh my God, this is who I really am. This is me. That is a moment of connection with your true self. So, if we can write a false narrative about ourselves, it may be the imposter syndrome that tells us we're not good enough. It may be anything, right? We can therefore have the power to write the true story. So through those moments of contemplation, taking time for ourselves, I am a huge proponent. Let me say this, I can't say it enough times, of finding a contemplative practice that works for you. Meditation, hiking, writing, journaling, centering prayer, whatever it may be. Yoga. But find a contemplative practice that works for you. And in that stillness, you will connect with your true self. And from that place, be able to write the true story. Part of that process is becoming aware of the false story. So it doesn't mean that we ever get rid of our ego. Parker Palmer says in those moments we stare our monsters in the face. And over time, those monsters aren't so scary anymore. So take the time to do that. And then from that place, we can begin to make decisions from our true self. So when we're asked to do something where the ego before felt like, I have to say yes, I have to say yes. People are watching me. People are expecting things of me. I won't be good enough if I don't say yes. Your true self will be fine with it. To say, no, this isn't for me. So, powerful questions. Again, there are always questions that you can ask of yourself or hire a coach to help you through the process. To be able to check in with yourself and to be able to kind of shake loose the dust or the debris and get down to the core of your being. One question is, if I didn't care what anyone thought, who would I be? If I didn't care what anyone thought, who would I be? So that question tends to help you get out of the ego. If you're out of the ego, you're not likely to get burned out. It also means that you can set healthy boundaries. And if you can set healthy boundaries, you can avoid stress. So it prevents both. What could I do that would most align with who I am? Well, that goes to the next question. Who am I? Remember we asked earlier. It's an important question to ask. And if you get to a place where you can state that question clearly and succinctly and quickly, who am I? Then what could I do that would most align with my true self? What is the one thing that I could not bear having not done? So, for example, for me, I'm a writer. I could not go to my grave knowing that I didn't write. Not Not being published or having accolades or any of that. That doesn't matter. The point is that I at least have to put my butt in the seat, as they say, and put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard and write, because that is part of who I am. What is that thing for you? What is that thing at the end of your days when you look back on your life? If you didn't do it, you would be completely unsettled. Out of all of my options on a scale of 1 to 10, and use these type of questions often on a scale of 1 to 10 because they really help to put things in perspective. How passionate am I about them? So if you have a number of options, if somebody has presented you with a plethora of things that you could do, A, don't try to do all of them because they are not for you. Okay. And check in with yourself by saying, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how passionate am I about this? Not how interested am I? That's a different question. Another way of asking is, how much joy does it bring me? And answer that honestly for yourself. Another good question to ask would be, who is more passionate about this than me? It really helps to put things in perspective because we can delude ourselves. We can fool ourselves, lie to ourselves and say, oh no, I am super passionate about this. But if you ask yourself that question, right? So for example, affordable housing. Somebody says, hey, we'd like to have you work on this community organizing group on a project for affordable housing on the south side of Chicago. Are you in? Now you already know your plate is full. And you have some interest in this, and you certainly think it's meaningful work, but gosh, can you really handle more work? You ask yourself, am I passionate about it? Yeah, I'm passionate about it. But then you ask yourself this question, who is more passionate about this than me? Oh, wow. And that person pops in your head. And then when you weigh them out together, you're like, okay, compared to this person, yeah, I'm not so passionate, but they are. So then you can say to that community organizing group, you know what? I would love to help out, but I've got a lot going on right now. But you know who I think you should ask? Who is more equipped for this than me? Same type of question, but again, we're talking about a matter of skill. Maybe you don't have the skill set for this. That's okay. Doesn't mean you're any less of a person. We're all equipped for certain things. We all cannot possibly be equipped for everything. Thank God. So, who's more equipped for it than you? And this one. What does the stillness say to me? When you're there in those quiet moments, when you're in those moments of contemplation, when you're just able to sit and everything is quiet, I know, you're like, what? Those things don't happen. Okay, pretend they do, because they do sometimes. When you're sitting there in the stillness, think of that passage from 1 Kings, when Elijah is running from Jezebel's assassins, or those who are trying to kill him, and he goes up the mountain where God tells him to, and then there's a whirlwind, and God was not in the whirlwind, and there was a fire, and there was an earthquake, and then the sound of sheer silence. What does the sound of sheer silence speak to you about yourself? Because that's who you are. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you sharing this space and this time with me. I look forward to the question and answer session to be able to hear your feedback and to hear what drives you. And please feel free to contact me anytime with any thoughts or questions, because this is important, because you are equipped, you are passionate, you are good, but use it all for the right things. Don't be stressed. Don't burn out. And don't be a martyr. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for being here and sharing your space with me and George as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Brandon. I really appreciated so much of what you had to say. I was really struck by your distinction between stress and burnout. I thought that was really, really helpful. Especially, I was thinking about just what we've all been through in the past year. Many different experiences of a pandemic and other issues, and how helpful that distinction is, and thinking about how I'm doing, how we're doing.
Yeah, the two are definitely often confused, aren't they?
Yes.
Especially burnout. People say, well, I'm burned out because I'm doing too much, but they forget those other factors of doing too much for who and for what reasons, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I guess the other thing that really struck me is that you gave two examples of the martyrdom syndrome. And I know at least some of the people in the room from your the comments that you've posted. And I know that for a lot of people in the room, they have both of those issues of being a caregiver and also a social justice warrior. So there's kind of a double whammy a little bit there, I think, for lots of us who are passionate about justice, but also have significant caregiving responsibilities.
Yeah. So let's see what Cindy said here.
Yeah, I really appreciated what Cindy said in the chat earlier about some people really do expect you to make everything perfect. And how do you address that? Okay, and she's saying that's a situation of many in our churches, right, who encounter pastors. We encounter so many broken people. We need to set boundaries, but that's exhausting. And it's sometimes not received well. So do you have any suggestions there?
Yeah. So what I like to do with organizations, especially churches, is to work with them to create intentional covenants. So we start from that point. And then once there's a covenant set, they corporately together will set the boundaries, so that when you as the leader or whomever in the organization says, hey, we're getting really close to a boundary here, that somebody doesn't come across as offended and say, hey, wait a minute, this is your job, you're the pastor or you're the whomever, you're supposed to take care of me, so that person has already agreed and understood that we're not going there, wherever they're at. So it's a lot easier when everybody's already agreed to it and it's part of the culture than it is just to throw out and say, no, these are my personal boundaries and you must respect them, because people don't understand personal boundaries, unfortunately.
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions about, if you're in the midst of that, how to set boundaries or communicate boundaries, expectations?
Yeah. So what I would do is, I'm all about the questions, right? So people don't usually realize that there is a difference between want and need. Seems simple, but it's not. So at first I would ask the person, what is it that you want, right? If they're coming at me and getting ready to breach or skirt my boundaries, what do you want? And then after they answer that, then I ask, what do you need? And that occurs with them to think, oh, wait a minute, what I really need is different than what I thought I wanted, right? And then I'll ask him, if you get what you need, how will you feel? And then once we get past that, I'll say, what are you willing to contribute to this dynamic, right? Or to your self-betterment or your situation to improve it, right? So isn't a dynamic of, okay, I'm the one who's responsible for helping you so that you have some skin in the game. If I help you, or if we work together, and I would reframe it, right? I wouldn't say if I help you, if we do this thing together, what are you willing to contribute? So it shifts everything in their thinking so that in the end, hopefully, you don't really have to do anything. They feel empowered and aware enough to realize that they have the power to handle their own issue, and that what they needed isn't what they originally thought they wanted.
And I guess you said they would be empowered to handle their own issue, but I don't know. Do you say this is what I could do, or as much as I could do, or I could make these connections, or help you to make these connections?
Oh yes. Mm-hmm. Once you get to the core of the issue, I may not be equipped, or I may have the skills, but I may just, my cup is full. Then I'm all about referral, right? Yeah. I'm in community organizing, right? The iron rule: never do for others what they can do for themselves. I'm all about that as well. And so if in that case, then I'll start bringing the awareness that they already have the tools that they need, if that's the case. And I'll do that through questions as well. It is, it's much easier to get to somebody, especially when you have stark differences in ideology or thinking or anything, to get to them through questions than it is to make statements and hope that they'll see things your way.
And I hear what Cindy is saying about the process of setting boundaries can definitely be exhausting, especially when people are relentless about needs or wants, I guess, about wants.
Yeah.
I was really intrigued by the deep questions that you were asking. I thought those were really evocative questions. And I know that Julie Jennings mentioned how helpful she thought it would be as part of annual evaluation or performance reviews. And you talked about creating vulnerable cultures so that those kinds of conversations could happen, and that people would know that they were safe having those kinds of conversations.
Yeah.
So could you talk about creating vulnerable cultures?
Sure. I think organizations go through 3 phases of conflict, so to speak. There's the negative conflict, the active conflict, and then there's the settled conflict, like transition phase where things are starting to move along towards actual change. And then there's healthy conflict, where the system or the culture is vulnerable enough where you can introduce healthy conflict to ignite change in a system that's in stasis. So to create that covenant where everybody feels comfortable with that healthy conflict, that iron sharpens iron sort of mindset, to say that you can challenge me and I'm okay with that. And I think that starts with a question-based mindset, basically a culture of curiosity. So what I like to do with organizations is, we always have our value, our missions, and our vision statements. And I think as soon as those statements are compiled and put on paper or on the boardroom walls, they're obsolete, because our context is constantly in flux. The makeup of our personnel or of our church bodies, our congregations, everything is in flux. Even who we are, we're evolving as individuals. So what I like to do is help them find their corporate true self. What are their values? And those generally don't change, right? That can be a statement. But the mission and the vision should be a set of questions, because it's a lot easier to steer a moving vessel, right? So through those questions can be checked in on at any time and see, okay, here's our values. How are we doing these things currently within this context with these people? And use it as a lens for their mission and their vision, so that they make incremental changes and make sure they're still staying vulnerable right? Without having to take out the hammer and break the stone and then start upsetting people and igniting negative conflict. So I think maintaining a culture of curiosity is to maintain a culture of vulnerability.
It's interesting. I really relate what you're saying to what Nicole Havelka said in her workshop yesterday in terms of being grounded in your purpose, grounded in your why, and that really helps clarify direction. And at this point, we might not be able to see very far out into the future, but it clarifies where we are right now, that the need that's right in front of you that you were talking about as part of vocation. There's been some interesting conversation in the chat. Let me go back a little bit. Emily Howard talked about church-related supervisors having some form of martyrdom syndrome, and Cindy replying, martyrdom is pretty much expected and rewarded in the church.
Yeah.
So do you have any suggestions for specifically dealing with supervisors, especially when they're dying on every hill and or want to?
Yeah. I think especially within the church context, we have people who sit on boards just because we need and councils just because we need a warm body to fill a seat. And either we'll pull somebody in who will say, okay, sure, I can lead CE board, or I can lead mission, or I can lead whatever. Or we'll have somebody who's serving their fourth 4-year term when they were promised, 1 4-year term. I don't think we do enough leadership development within the church, and we don't put the right people in the right positions and train them with the right tools and train them to ask the right questions. And that leads to over-functioning on the part of the clergy, which of course leads to burnout, but it also leads to false expectations on both sides and a lot of contempt, I would say. And so, the leaders expect the pastor to do everything, and the pastor's like, well, why aren't you guys helping me out? But nobody is having the conversation. So I think good leadership development within the church and putting the right leaders in the right places is key.
Okay. Michelle just asked a really good question about what advice do you have to encourage people to practice reflective work, even without asking them to share the vulnerable self? She says she's encountered some people who just won't share at that level.
Yeah. So, right. And that is two different things, right? The person who will vocalize it versus the person who will at least do the self work or the reflective work. Gosh, I just paint the picture of, ask the question, what's at stake? What's at stake if you don't do the work? And I would really encourage them to reflect on that question. And again, I'm going to go back to leading with questions, because if you tell them you have to do this work or you're going to make yourself suffer, it goes in one ear and out the other. But if you ask them, who could you not live with being at the end of your days, or something like that, and make them think like, oh, wow, I'm here. I have to get to here, right? Create that sense of urgency. And therefore I have to do this inner work. The hero's journey, right? That idea that this person, or the heroine's journey, is on a journey to get from here to here, and they don't really know what they're looking for, but there's a fatal flaw that emerges, and they can choose to do things the fake way, so to speak, to get here. And eventually they try that and it doesn't work out, and then they get to where they do things the right way and finally embrace what ends up being their true self. And so I would kind of guide the person through that with questions, right? What's at stake? what's the fatal flaw that's getting in the way? And I wouldn't phrase it that way, because then it sounds like, what's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, what's getting in your way of doing this inner work?
Huh. It's so I've just read Jesus and the Disinherited by Howard Thurman, and sort of Thurman's core questions: who am I? What is my purpose? And how do I get there? Not most expeditiously, but using my values. And I see your questioning method kind of aligning with that you evoke responses, which is great.
Yeah. Also, I always prefer to ask positive questions rather than negative. So what's getting in your way is perfectly fine. But I would also throw in when's a time when you did do the deep work, and how was that for you, right? To kind of remind them, like, wait, I can do this, and it felt really good.
Yeah.
Yep, Daniel.
So Jay is asking, or made the comment, Jay Beery made the comment, there was a point made in a workshop yesterday about we need to stop glamorizing overwork, and how to make that shift, which has been especially difficult this year, as people have been dealing with a pandemic and really had a hard time taking time off.
Yeah. What is the line in Mary Oliver's The Journey? That final line. What will you do with this one true and precious life? Or I know I quoted that, but that's the question, right? You've got one life to live the best that you can, to, yes, affect change, and yes, to be a humane human being. But in the process, if you overwork, if you overfunction, if you over anything, what good is it, right? So I think just remind people, what legacy do you want to leave? And for whether it's for your children, for your congregation, for whomever. And when you think about that question, nobody is ever going to say, oh, that I worked 14 hours a day. What are you talking about, right? It's going to be something about being a humane human being, about being loving and kind, and spent time with family and friends, and right, that lived life to the fullest. And the fullest is a matter of depth, not a matter of how many hours you're doing work.
Yeah, I see people responding to that question. Cindy, what legacy do you want to leave? Yes, that is a very, very good question that can guide us.
Yeah.
And Emily Howard mentioned the Serenity Prayer.
Yep.
Of course.
Yep.
That one has guided a lot of people. A lot of days.
I think too, kind of a couple of overarching quotes or mindsets that have been helpful for me that connect all of these is, one is Meister Eckhart said, only the hand that erases writes the true thing. Right. So what in that story, when we're talking about writing the true story, right? We create false narratives. What needs to be erased from the story? Not just out of your life. What do you know, how many fewer hours do you need to be working, and how many who can do this better than you so that you can reduce your workload, or who do you need to have better boundaries with, and do you not need to be in relationship with? There's those things, but what needs to be erased from the story itself so that you stop thinking you need to do these things? I think that's one thing. The other is Rilke's quote about living the questions, right?
Yes.
Right? Live the questions, and perhaps someday in the future you will live your way into the answers. But I think we are too focused on having the answers, and we need to be more focused on finding, not just coming up with, but finding and living our way into the right questions.
Yeah, that's good. That's helpful. Can you say anything? You talked about finding a practice, a meditative or contemplative practice. Can you say anything more about how to find one that fits you?
Yeah, it really is a trial and error thing, and you know it when you know it. And one thing is, for example, people will do meditation and, oh, I got to do it the right way, and oh, it didn't do anything for me, and I have to clear my mind, and all of these fallacies. Meditation isn't about clearing your mind. And if you try to clear your mind, you will become attached to your thoughts and therefore defeat the whole purpose. Your thoughts should be like clouds floating by. Notice that they're there, watch them go by, and keep breathing. And it's how you do the practice. You know, for me, I count my breaths. But if you're a writer, write. That's writing, hiking for me. When I'm in the mountains, my bliss is there. There's nothing better for me than to go on a long hike in the mountains and then sit down and write. I mean, I am in heaven. But just try things and don't shame yourself about whether it works or not, because not every practice is for everybody. That's the first thing. Second thing, you've heard this before and it's true. It's called a practice for a reason. These practices are not there so that we can immediately experience enlightenment, right? Yeah. It's an investment that keeps digging. The analogy I use is that we are like wells. And through contemplative practices, we dig our wells deeper and deeper and deeper to the source of life, God, that is the point of interconnectedness between all of us. And so it's a process, it's a practice, and we will reap the benefits in the process and down the road, not right there in that moment.
It's a nice image of the well. I appreciate that. Yeah. Well, I think we have come to the end of our time, but I want to say thank you so much for sharing what you did today and the wisdom that you have. I think it's such an important topic right now, avoiding burnout. So we appreciate your presenting it. We appreciate the UCC Church Building and Loan Fund for sponsoring the session. We have an hour's break now, and I would encourage everyone to take this as a chance for Sabbath or community. If you haven't done networking yet, now's an opportunity or a chance to check our expos. Our closing plenary will be in an hour at 1:30 p.m. Eastern, 12:30 Central, 10:30 Pacific. So we look forward to seeing everybody there. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming and for interacting. And thanks again to Brandon.
Thank you, George, and thank you all.